I'm looking so fresh. When I walk by, breaking their necks. Waiting in line at the team store. Now I'm feeling fly like a condor. Eyes on me when I walk through the door. Man, I wish I bought a couple more. Cause I really love my city. It was worth every penny. If it were at my show, then I know they gon' tip me. Think I might add a couple patches. If you think it's ugly, you capping. Now my whole outfit matching. Never going out of fashion.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome, episode 652, Talking Friars podcast and YouTube show. Ben Fadden with you here, October 24th, 2024. If you missed my conversation with Jim Russell yesterday, go ahead and check that out. Today, we are doing a rotation season review. I believe the last couple of years, my season reviews have been more player individual based. Like I would go through one pitcher or a couple pitchers at a time. I wanted to go through the whole rotation, and maybe I'll change this midway through where I'll do, Tatis only him on that season review. But for now, I just want to keep it as one whole group, maybe make it a longer show. And those that are listening to this on their drive to work or on their drive home, maybe you could split it up over a few days or whatever. But I just want to get all of them here in this rotation. I want to try it that way and see how you guys like that this year. So if you're new to this, it's just me going through these players today, the rotation, and just going through their season, some high points, low points, obviously going through their numbers, their overall numbers, and then just talking about each player, just some thoughts that come out of this head of mine on what I thought of their year and of the future too. It's not just a review, but I'll also talk about the future as well. All right, so let's start with Dylan Cease, then we'll go to you, Darvish, then we'll go to Joe Musgrove, then we'll go to Michael King, and we'll end up with Matt Waldron, Randy Vasquez, Jhony Brito, and Martín Pérez. All right, so starting off with Dylan Cease, a 4.8 F4, 33 starts, 189 and a third innings. This is regular season, by the way. All these numbers, this is regular season. A 3.47 ERA, 1.067 WHIP, 224 strikeouts, 65 walks, 18 homers allowed, and then he hit 2 batters the whole year. So not a lot of hit batters there. If you go look at his baseball savant, there's a lot of red. The strikeout rate, 89th percentile, the whiff rate, 92nd percentile. Obviously, the fastball velocity was there, and it was there throughout the playoffs as well. And when the Padres got Dylan Cease, we were expecting him to be an innings eater, not just an innings eater, because I feel like the innings eater term is for guys that you're not really expecting much out of, other than they're going to be kind of like a rubber arm and they'll be healthy. But with Dylan Cease, it was more than that. I mean, this guy at points this year was one of the best pitchers in baseball. Obviously, we know he had that no-hitter at Nationals Park on July 25th. I feel like, though, with the great moments that happened this year, I don't think Dylan Cease is one that's immediately thought of. Maybe that's just me, and maybe there's other Padres fans that do immediately think of him. Maybe it's because it was a day game and it was on the road. It was against the Nats. Maybe because Joe Musgrove already threw a no-hitter in the Padres' history. If this was the first one, maybe it would be different. Because I know the Musgrove no-hitter, that's going to be remembered, obviously, forever. That one was also a night game. And that one was where I feel like everyone was watching, because wasn't it during COVID, right? It wasn't 2020, but 2021. I feel like there were probably a lot of people that were locked into that, With Dylan Cease, people were at work, day game. I want to say that was a game that started at 9 a.m. because it was in D.C., or maybe 10 a.m., maybe 9:30 a.m. our time. But it wasn't like a 6:40 start or even a 5 o'clock start our time. Maybe that's what contributed to it. But I think you think of the other moments of this year, and what will come up before that is probably some of the postseason moments, the Profar robbery, Tatis's homers, but also the 8-0 comeback against the Cubs. and Jackson Merrill's homers against Mason Miller and Edwin Diaz, and Jurickson Profar against the Nationals, but that was at Petco Park, not at Nats Park. That was before the Padres went to Nats Park, and then Cease delivered that no-hitter. What other moments would Padres fans like immediately think of? Maybe the Manny Machado walk-off homer against the D-backs. There were the regular season games against the Dodgers where it was like Merrill's first big moment, that RBI single that he had through the left side. And then the Mr. Relevant game where on Sunday Night Baseball, Profar had that ball off the wall to, I think, clear the bases there, literally like the day after Will Smith called him kind of irrelevant. The Donovan Solano walk-off, down 5-0. They beat the Dodgers. Jackson Merrill's, I think it was his game-tying homer, 8th inning of that game, I want to say, against Blake Trinan into right field. Luis Ariza's walk-off against the Dodgers. I mean, how many things did I just name there, I feel like a lot of those come up before we get to, maybe some before we even remember, oh yeah, Dylan Cease threw a no-hitter. But yeah, that happened. And that stretch that he went on there, it wasn't a long stretch, but 4-start stretch, 1 earned run in 27 2/3 innings. He was dialed in, and it was like, all right, yep, that is the Dylan Cease that the Padres acquired. And remember what the Padres gave up in that deal: Drew Thorpe, Steven Wilson, who I was a little sad to see him go, especially because like how it happened. He was about to board the flight to South Korea. I almost said North Korea. Sorry, South Korea. And then you're like, no, you're gonna go to the White Sox. And then he had to be on that White Sox team the entire year. Like, man, that's gotta suck. So I felt for him there. Gave up Iriarte. They gave up some good pieces there. But what they were getting back was someone that wasn't just a free agent at the end of this year, but they had multiple years of control of him. And when he is on, he is one of the best pitchers in baseball. And he can go 7 innings and just dominate. Unfortunately, obviously, in the postseason, that's not what happened. He gave up 8 earned runs combined, covered 5 innings combined in Game 1 and Game 4. That's combined there in the National League Division Series. And one of those outings, yeah, it was on 3 days rest, but you acquire Dylan Cease to pitch in those big games and to pitch better than he did in those big games. And for me, it just came down to he didn't hit his spots good enough. I think of the Shohei Ohtani homer in Game 1 of the Division Series. You want to throw high to Ohtani? Go ahead, but you got to get it higher than where it was. Ohtani can still get to that ball. And he didn't throw it high enough. I'm not saying like there were people I saw, don't pitch to Ohtani. Well, go look back at the stats. Ohtani didn't do very good against the Padres. The Padres weren't afraid to pitch to him. But I'm not going to sit here and act like Shohei Ohtani's not a great talent. He is. So you've got to be careful with how you pitch to him. Or like hopefully you understand what I'm saying here. You don't be careful with how you pitch to him because you're so confident, but you still got to hit the spot. But like, you're so confident in what you're doing. Your mentality going in is, I'm not afraid of him. Right? But obviously you don't throw something down the middle or where Cease threw it there. I do give credit for Ohtani for hitting that ball out because that's probably not an easy pitch to hit out. But still, I think that pitch could have been a little bit higher. And then, yeah, for me, it was just the disappointment of not going very long. And yeah, I agreed with Mike Schilt in the moment. I think it was, Game 4, where I thought he could have left Cease in there a little bit more. I know it wasn't going great, and there were a lot of base runners reaching, but it's still Dylan Cease, and they still had a lot of game to cover there. And for me, just in that situation, I'm just like, maybe it was just me hoping that we were going to get more out of Dylan Cease, and we just didn't. So that was disappointing. And, overall, if we have to, I'm not big on grading, but if we have to just like give a blunt, fair statement on Dylan Cease's year this year, it would be like the Padres season. I would say strong regular season, but at the end, didn't get to the big prize. At the end, it was disappointing. So it's not like I'm going to say it was an F, but I feel like it's going to be hard for me to say an A on a lot of guys because of how it ended. And with Dylan Cease, I mean, especially it's not like you got this big sample size of postseason outings. You got 2. And like I said, it was a combined, 5 innings of work from Dylan Cease. That's not up to his standard. That's not up to the fan standard of what we were hoping to get out of Dylan Cease. And I know in the postseason, there are those shorter leashes on these guys. But at the same time, you still got to give me more than 5 innings. Give us more than 5 innings, right? So, yeah, strong regular season. But then when it mattered the most, it was still a disappointing end for sure. Cease, by the way, he's under control through next season before hitting free agency. So hopefully we can have a strong postseason, assuming we make the postseason next year, a strong postseason from Dylan Cease. All right, let's get to Yu Darvish. So Yu Darvish obviously had an interesting regular season, to say the least, because he was on the mound, then he dealt with injuries, and then he had to leave, with the personal reasons. But then he came back. And I remember when that news was announced that Darvish is coming back, it was a little surprising because it just happened. Like, he's back. He's going to be at Petco Park today. It was like, oh, okay. All right, cool. And then he was starting pretty soon after that. So I give him props for, coming back, helping the team. And then he was the best Padres starter. I thought it was going to be Michael King, how he pitched in that wild card game. But, I mean, Yu Darvish came through in the division series. I don't think we could have asked for more. So I'll get to that. But in 2024, his regular season, a 1.1 F WAR, say that 5 times fast. 16 games for him, 81 2/3 innings. Again, regular season here. 3.31 ERA, a 1.065 WHIP, 78 punchouts, 22 walks, 12 home runs allowed, and 3 hit by pitches. You look at the baseball savant, and you look at the pitching part of it, I should say, there's not any dark red. But if you look at his value in that category above the pitching, there is the dark red on pitching run value. I'm not going to act like I know totally what that means, but it's in the 90th percentile there on pitching run value. So any smart people that know exactly what that is, feel free in the comments to let everyone know totally what that means. But I guess that's good. The positives for Darvish this year, I mean, we have to talk about the postseason. I mean, it starts and ends, really, right? I guess it doesn't start and end because he did have that really good stretch in the regular season before it was a home run derby against the Yankees, who are now the Padres fans' favorite team right now for a week or a couple weeks for this World Series. Yeah, it was I was at that game. That was tough to watch for sure. Like, man, but we're talking about positives here. Regular season, he had a stretch. I wrote it here in my Gaslamp Ball article. By the way, if you want to look at this, like you want to read about this, I did season reviews. I wanted to get all those knocked out before coming on here and doing it. I did those on Gaslamp Ball because I do write for them as well. For those that don't know, it's not like every day, but every once in a while. Where did I put it? Here it is. At one point, Darvish 4 consecutive starts without allowing a run, April 30th through May 19th. And it wasn't just all bad teams. I mean, he did this against the Dodgers. He did this against the Braves. So it wasn't just, the Marlins and the White Sox, right? Really good. He was really good. And so it sucked that he had to, he was down with the injuries. And then when you got that hope that, okay, he's going to come back, well, then it's the personal reasons. I'm not faulting him for that. Like, that's obviously more important than baseball, but it was disappointing. that we weren't able to have Darvish for a good chunk of, but I'm not going to make too big of a deal about that because, I mean, look how he came back and pitched in the postseason. And we had him in the postseason when it mattered the most. Unfortunately, the offense didn't score enough runs for him, especially there in that game 5 when he definitely kept the Padres in that game. But yeah, his postseason did his job for sure. 7 innings, 1 earned run against the Dodgers in game 2, which evened up the series. And then the Padres, they win game 3 with that big offensive game. You know, Petco was shaking. That was a great game to be at. And then obviously they weren't able to win a game the rest of the series. But Darvish did his job. Game 5, 6 2/3, 1 earned run. I mean, I guess if you're a Padre fan, you could say, no, Darvish, you got to give up no runs. But it's the Dodgers lineup that we're talking about here. You know, I think if you go ask Dodger fans, they would probably were demanding for Yamamoto or expecting, like, you know, at minimum, okay, give us, 4 innings or something like that. But they probably were expecting Yamamoto to give up a run, at least, give up a couple of runs with how he was pitching, And unfortunately, the Padres, I'll give credit to Yamamoto as well. Like, he came up and he was sharper. And, man, he missed a couple of balls. But getting back to Darvish, yeah, he did his job for sure. His postseason was pretty darn good, pretty special. It just sucks that it was only 2 starts that we got to see. Pitched pretty well against Ohtani. The pitching ninja, Rob Friedman, on Twitter, he posted a nasty overlay of Darvish's 5 pitches: cutter, curve, sweeper, fastball, and slider. I embedded it, by the way, in my Gaslamp Ball Darvish season review. 5 different pitches and overlaid them on one of Darvish's strikeouts against Ohtani. That's pretty cool to watch. When I was watching that back, and I replayed that like 5 times, you just see how much of a master of the game, of the craft that Darvish is, and how much we should appreciate who he is as a pitcher, and just how special he is, because we don't see that in the game. Of course, there's pitchers that try to, work on new pitches in the off season or even maybe during the season, and they have a teammate that throws a pitch that they like and they think that they can implement that into what they do. But for Darvish to have so many pitches, he doesn't just have 5 pitches. That was just 5 pitches that he threw there in that one strikeout to Ohtani. But the amount of pitches, and it just, you go ask anyone, it feels like, I'm not in there, but anyone in the media that asks teammates about Darvish, they'll probably say, like, this guy prepares better than anyone that they've seen. And I'm not surprised with how we've seen him attack different guys, because a lot was made of the Darvish versus Shohei matchup. Obviously Japanese, I get it. And Ohtani, I think, looked up to Darvish, right? And there's just, with that culture, right, there's a lot of respect there. And I love that about, Japanese baseball, and how big they are on respect. A lot was made of it. And I didn't really have a doubt that Darvish was going to win those matches. You don't think that Darvish knows, like, everything about Ohtani and all of the spots that he can get Ohtani out? Like, this guy prepares better than anyone for a start probably against the Reds in August. You think he's not going to know how to attack Ohtani and the Dodgers for a postseason game? A couple postseason games, for that matter? In the NLDS? Like, come on now, right? So that was cool to see Darvish shine on the big stage. And him, obviously, that was game 5. Him going up on the mound and him touching the PS with the heart. That obviously was a little bit of an emotional moment for sure. Darvish getting to be on because he was that one player. I'm not saying no other player did, because I don't want to say that because I don't totally remember. But Darvish was the one that I remember of him and I think his wife going up to those steps on the day that Peter Seidler passed away. And there was the flowers there and the Peter Seidler picture on the steps. And he was there to honor Peter in that moment with the memorial there. And that was cool. And, later that night, I remember seeing Joe Musgrove's family because I went there. I had to go. Seeing Joe's family. It wasn't Joe there, but Joe's family, paying their respect as well. And so just to see Darvish in that moment, him get that moment, facing the team that Peter, despised, hated the most, right? And Darvish gets that opportunity in, the winner go home game, and he pitched his butt off. He did his job. And unfortunately, the Padres offense just wasn't able to do theirs good enough, obviously. But for me, I look at this season way more positively for Darvish than I do negatively. I mean, we can bring up negatives about that Yankees game where he gave up homers to Soto, Judge, and Stanton. I forget if it was the same inning, back to back to back. It was crazy. It was a freaking home run derby, and it felt almost like it was a home game for the Yankees when those homers were happening, because I'm not saying it was all Yankees fans there. I'm just saying there were obviously Yankees fans on that third base side, and Padre fans are going to make noise when the other team a bunch of bombs off of us. So silent from us, and it was a lot of noise from them. And it was like, man, I hope we get this matchup again in the World Series so that Darvish can, get that revenge there. And unfortunately, that's not happening. Only half of it happening, and it's not our team. It's the Yankees going, but I'll whoop the Dodgers here. Starting tomorrow, Game 1 the World Series. Darvish, by the way, he's under contract through 2028. He's expected to make $16 million next year, according to Spot Track. And I guess the only negative would be that he was hurt and then wasn't able to be. I'm never going to say it's a negative that he's not there because of personal reasons. Just a negative that he wasn't able to make a bunch of starts that maybe we were expecting him or hoping for him to make. But again, I'm not pinning this on Darvish. I'm not pinning this on anything that happened. Whatever was happening is more important than baseball games. I know that we, diehard Padres fans, we don't just watch all the games, but we pay attention to what's happening in the off season pretty much every day, right? So it's one of the biggest things in our lives. And it's obviously one of the biggest things in his life too. But there are things that are more important, that are bigger. And whatever Darvish was dealing with, I assume that it was something with his family, but I won't go beyond that. I'm glad that he was able to take care of whatever he needed to there. And what I loved, because I don't want to leave this out, was AJ Preller being not the general manager of the Padres in that spot, but him being a human being in that spot with you, Darvish. And it seemed like Schilt as well. Schilt, as far as I heard, when, listening to those interviews and stuff, they never were asking Darvish about baseball stuff during that whole process. It seemed like they were trusting that Darvish was keeping himself in shape. They weren't asking him about that. It was, how are you doing? I don't even know if they were asking, they probably did when they had to because they needed an answer before the trade deadline. But they weren't continuously asking, okay, you coming back this week? Are you, what's your situation? It was more of, we're here to support you. We're here to support whatever you've got going. You're a human being. I'm a human being. I'm not the general manager of the Padres right now for you. I am friend, supporter, AJ. So that was cool. I think Darvish's agent spoke to either Ken Rosenthal or Dennis Lin in The Athletic. I think I remember reading that. Just about how AJ approached that with Darvish. And so that was really cool to read. That it wasn't about the baseball. It was about being a good human being. So that's awesome. I did want to mention that. All right. So that was Darvish. Again, like really great, end of the season for him. Postseason showed up for sure. I know there were some doubters out there about him and obviously the contract because he's going to, he's 42, I think, when the contract ends, something like that. And so there was obviously questions about what are we going to get with Darvish, but he showed up. It was awesome that he did it against the Dodgers. The only thing that's one of those games that he pitched was one where the Padres won, game 2. They weren't able to win game 5. And game 5, Darvish still pitched pretty darn well. He was not the reason why the Padres lost. I know he gave up runs, but it's not like the Padres scored 1 run. And it was like, well, Darvish shouldn't have allowed any runs. No, Padres didn't score any runs. So that's really on them, not on Darvish. All right, let's get to Joe Musgrove. Obviously, and I'll talk about it here, the Tommy John surgery and the ending was not what we were hoping for, but it seemed like it was going to come at some point. But his regular season, a 1.4 FWAR, 19 games, 99 and 2/3 innings, 3.88 ERA, a 1.174 WHIP, 101 strikeouts, 23 walks, 14 homers, allowed 10 hit by pitches. The only red in the baseball savant page for him was the walk rate. Not walking a bunch of guys, 87th percentile there. But the velocity, let's see, barrel rate. Now, barrel rate, I am a little confused by this. It's blue. It says it's in the 7th percentile, which I assume is really bad. But then I look on the far right and it says 10.5. So I'm assuming 10.5% of the balls in play against him were barreled. So is that actually good? Because, I know fastball velo, you want it to be in the red. There's something there's some stats where it's clear you want it to be in the red, but barrel rate, wouldn't you want the least amount of barrels? So I'm not totally clear if that's really good or if that's really bad. Is 10% barrel rate, is that really good or bad? I should probably know that, but for anyone that knows more than me about that, you can let me know or let everyone know, actually, in the comments. Positives from this year, I mean, when he came back from the IL, he's dealing with that elbow inflammation. He posted a 2.82 ERA. 5 of those 6 outings were at least 6 innings long. Final 6 starts of the regular season, we were feeling good about Joe. It's like, all right, yep, this is the Joe we're going to need going into the postseason. Heck yeah. And, I have a Joe Musgrove thing right here. So I'm biased. I get it. But I was always a believer in Joe. And I know Darvish pitched well. So this is nothing against him. It's just kind of my bias, I guess, with Joe. And I totally admit it. A winner take all game or biggest game of the season. I don't care where they're playing it at. Who do I want on the mound? Joe Musgrove. He may not be the most talented pitcher in the game, but he's talented and he has that dog in him. He is a competitor. And I don't want to compare specific players in certain sports, but it's there are certain players in other sports for me where I'm for basketball, for example, who do I want with, final possession or last couple of possessions? It's a tie game, game 5 of a playoff series, something like that. Who do I want with the ball, right? Or who do I want the play designed for? There are some players, both in the men's and women's, where I'm yeah, that person, that player right there. And Joe Musgrove is that for me with baseball. I want the ball in his hand because he's going to compete. He may not have his best stuff, but he's going to find a way to compete. And he's probably not going to give up 5 runs. He's probably going to keep you in the game. Or he'll dominate like he did in 2022. And so much respect I have for him pitching on a torn UCL, because it's not like he tore it the last couple of pitches. I'm pretty sure it was already torn. It was just a matter of how could he deal with it. Torn UCL, and he only gave up 1 run. And I get it, the Braves, they didn't have the healthiest lineup out there, but it's still a playoff team. there's still some guys that can do some serious damage in that lineup. And he went out there and gave up 1 run to the Braves in what ended up being series clinching victory. That's a heck of a job. That's someone that literally pitched until almost his arm fell off, where he couldn't do it anymore. And that's what San Diegans deserve, what diehard baseball fans deserve. I'm not saying like professional athletes, you should go as far as you can and always get hurt. I'm just saying, like, in the postseason biggest moments, we want these professional athletes, we want these guys to go give it their all and push through it. And Joe did that. He did that for his city. He did that for his teammates, probably for himself a little bit too. Like, no, I'm going to go contribute to this team winning a World Series. Even if I have to sit on the bench for the rest of it, I'm going to go contribute to the path to this World Series. I know I can help a little bit. And he gave it a go. And I give him serious props to him for that. And I hope that Padres fans will always respect him for doing that. And the Padres, they won that game. They ended up winning that game anyway, So big respect to him for that. And obviously he's going to now, he already had the Tommy John, but going through the recovery, the road to recovery has already begun. And he's probably going to miss the rest of this season. Now, it being Joe Musgrove and, the competitor that he is, if the Padres make some World Series run in 2025, I would be surprised if we didn't hear Joe Musgrove tell the media or a report out there that, hey, it could be a possibility that Joe Musgrove returns to the Padres for the World Series. That's who he is. So I wouldn't be surprised. But we should not expect him to return for 2025. And that's the question of, okay, so how are the Padres going to fill this? Obviously, Roki Sasaki is a name that's going to come up. We'll see if he ends up actually coming over or not. And then I'm sure like Blake Snell will get, brought up because he was a fan favorite, or at least that's what I see on social media. And sure seems like he loved it in San Diego. I just wonder about the price tag. And then there's other guys that we can talk about, once the offseason really starts here after the World Series. Certain free agent targets. Preller, it feels like there's times where it's like, all right, he can't trade anything else, right? I mean, everything's gone, and then he still makes trades. So trades are still a possibility with AJ. And then we'll see about some of these other guys that I'll bring up here later in this show. Jhony Brito, Randy Vasquez, Matt Waldron. We'll see. Maybe Brian Hoeing, and I'll talk about him obviously in a later show. Would he be an option? Would Adrian Morejon be an option at all? So that's a question, obviously, for later. This is more of reviews, but that's a big question mark, obviously, about, what's going to happen there with Joe. How are they going to, I'm not saying replace that or fill the shoes, but how are they going to, have someone else come in and take whatever spot in the rotation Joe would be at the beginning of next year? Because you're not filling Joe Musgrove's shoes. You're not replacing Joe Musgrove. You can't replace Joe Musgrove. You can't fill Joe Musgrove's shoes. And I'm not saying he's like gone. Like, he'll be there, I assume. And he could still be a leader. But it's different when you're not playing. He'd probably tell you that. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a loss. You don't need me to tell you that. Obviously, the negatives, it was more negative than positive, unfortunately, for Joe this year, with the injuries, the inflammation, going on the IL this year, missing that time, and then, comes back, and you're feeling really good, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, and then boom. Higgy catches that, the velocity's down, Joe's kind of shaking that arm out, and it's just not the same. And Joe, what really, broke my heart was him talking at Dodger Stadium that day that he announced the team. I think that was the day that he announced to the team that, yeah, I'm going to have Tommy John. Him talking to the media, realizing, because maybe it was like a whirlwind, and maybe it felt like he was actually recognizing in that moment that I'm done for a long time. And I'm not going to be able to help. Obviously, at this time, Padres were still in the series, obviously. Not going to be able to help this team go win that first World Series. And if I would have been healthy, we could have won that World Series. Maybe that's what he was thinking. And, when you put your all into something and because of an injury, it's not like you didn't perform, but because of an injury, you're like, your body's not even allowing you to go help achieve that dream that you have for that city that, you represent, you love so much. That's just got to be so hard. And he's not someone that you see crying, right? But he was holding those tears back, and that just sucked to watch. It did. Man, I'm already, just right now, I'm kind of getting emotional thinking about it, like, because obviously I don't know Joe, but I've communicated back and forth with some of his family, and um, it's just such a genuine love that they have for the city of San Diego, and all the love that they have received from us Padres fans. With the coffee shop that they have, and just what Joe has given to this city, right? It's just like, man, why did it have to happen to Joe? Why does it have to happen to the best human beings, the guys that it's like, man, I want that, like I just said earlier, I want that guy pitching in the must win, win or go home, put that guy on the mound for us, right? Why does it have to happen to him? It just sucks. So yeah, it sucked hearing that news. It sucked watching Joe talk to the media at Dodger Stadium that day. And it sucked, obviously, the rest of that series, or that whole series. I think it was before the series started. But that whole series, knowing that we're not going to have Joe. And obviously, next season, it's going to suck. So, obviously, we'll keep you updated on any Musgrove news. He had the surgery, obviously. He had it in Texas. I think it was the same day. Was it the day of Game 5? Same day of Ha-Seong Kim's surgery that he had, the torn labrum. So both of them seem to be on the road to recovery. And like I said in my gas lamp article, thank you, Joe, for literally going until your body said no. I know I will always love and respect you for that, to respect him for that. Like, man, it's like, for diehard fans of a team, again, that's what we want to see. We want a player to love it and want to win as much as we want our team to win. And that's what we get in Joe Musgrove. And so, again, it just sucks that it happened to him, the Tommy John. Like, it happens to pretty much everyone now. But that it happened in the middle of a postseason game like that, it sucks. That's really what I got on Joe, really. I wish I could say more positive stuff about what happened this year, but I mean, this is what happened. It was, him being on the IL, and then him having, Tommy John, and the realization that I can't help my team, the team that I love, the team that I grew up rooting for. I can't help them go do something that they've never done in the franchise's history. It's a freaking bummer, for sure. All right, before getting to Michael King, just a reminder of some of the great partners of the show. Gaglione Bros Famous Cheesesteaks and Garlic Fries. Their main location is on Friars Road. Website is in the description. Click that link. Phone number, address, all that good stuff. Cheesesteaks, cheesesteak fries, garlic fries, cheese fries. They've got it all there. Great stuff. Obviously, inside Snapdragon Stadium. During the Padres season, they're inside Petco Park as well. Breaking Tea, they've got some Padres and Aztec shirts and sweatshirts. Click that link in the description there. Underdog, 50% deposit match up to $1,000 on Underdog. Click that link in the description. Code Talking Friars. That's the same code for SeatGeek, by the way. $20 off your first order there. You can use it at some point in the off season if there's other events, or wait for next season for it. But or you used it already, and I thank you for that, for taking advantage. Just trying to help you all out with some stuff there. So thank you to the sponsors, for the partners of this show, for supporting the channel, and thank you to everyone that helps them out as well. I know Breaking Tea for sure got a lot of love during October from Padres fans during the postseason, end of the regular season, into the postseason, with some of the designs that were there. So good job from Padres fans there. All right, let's get to Michael King. A 3.9 F-WAR on the regular season, 30 starts, 173 and 2/3 innings. So didn't hit the 180 mark. That was his goal, but he did hit it in the postseason. 2.95 ERA, 1.192 WHIP, 201 strikeouts that he had, 63 walks, 17 home runs allowed, which almost all of them were like at the beginning of the year, and then 7 hit batters. His baseball savant page was very impressive. Lots of red, hard hit rate, 97th percentile, average exit velocity, 99th percentile, 85.7 miles per hour. Yeah, that's not hit very hard. I mean, we see balls that are hit over 100 miles per hour. Off speed run value, 99th percentile. So like no runs are being scored off speed. I think that's what that means. Again, smarter people than me, you can let me know if I'm correct on that. But yeah, positives for Michael King. I mean, I could talk all day about Michael King and the positives from this year. Going in, it was our Seth Lugo, right? Reliever. He had starting experience, but just like Lugo did, but it wasn't a lot. And Lugo comes in, starter, obviously success. Then he goes and signs with the Royals, and then he was pitching really good for the Royals and all-star, right? All that stuff. With King, we're hoping for the same thing, and we were able to get that. King was able to stay healthy. Sure, there were times, I think the ball that hit him in the leg in Baltimore, he had to take a little bit of time. They gave him an extra, maybe time around or a few extra days off, but he never went on the IL. He almost got to that 180 innings, and he got to it, obviously, after that game 1. Amazing start in the wild card series. I wish we were getting that start in the division series, because, man, that maybe it wouldn't have helped, to be honest, because Padres offense obviously there at the end. Now, King though, let me double check. Yeah, game 3 is when he pitched. 5 earned runs in game 3. Yeah, I mean, if we would have got that wild card Michael King in game 3 of the DS, I wonder how that would have went. But unfortunately, we didn't. But with the positives, I mean, a lot we could talk about. There's pressure, obviously. Well, pressure is a word that, obviously fans can throw out there, I can throw out there, media can throw out there. And maybe players do feel that pressure. But I thought that Joe Mazzulla, the Celtics head coach, he was saying something about pressure the other day to Boston media. And it was pretty much, I'm not quoting him, but it was pretty much like, pressure is made up. It's a word. You guys in the media, you guys are contractually obligated to write 500 words things about pressure on us, and we have to win and all that. If we don't win, what, people with knives are coming at us? Are people going to be swinging at us? Like, it's still, life goes, we either win or we don't, right? So the word pressure, it just tightens you up. And I think his standpoint is like, no, there's not pressure. We either win or we lose. Putting pressure on ourselves, like, what good is that going to do? So maybe Michael King didn't feel the pressure, but then I do remember, or maybe that's some guys in that clubhouse. Because Michael King, I do remember he did answer a question. I think it was after game 1 of that wild card series. And his answer to one of the questions was about how, like, no, he didn't try to. There's some guys that try to make a postseason game like another game, it's just like another game. But Michael King didn't. He wanted it to feel like, no, it's not just another game, because he wanted to be hyped up for it. Almost like when he was a reliever in the bullpen in those big, those big appearances, right? It's big time. And he wanted to have that feeling. And so maybe that's what helped him, right? But I think in the regular season, though, I'm not sure he was putting, that's where I come back to this whole pressure thing. I don't think that he was putting the pressure on him like that, because he always believed in his abilities. The pressure maybe was coming from the outside about the rotation, the injuries, or guys being away, obviously, with Darvish and Musgrove. It's like, oh, you got to step up. There's pressure on you, Michael King. Are you going to be able to stay healthy? And there were all the questions about the workload and all that. And I feel like Michael King was just always confident in himself. And he's like, he may have said this at one point this season, I don't want to hear about the inning stuff. I don't want to hear that, because I'm not even thinking about that. I feel good, and I'm going to get to 180 innings. And he was determined to do that. And eventually he did in that, the wild card start. He got to that 180 innings mark because he went 7 innings. He had a way of not making the moment too big, or he made it big, but he was just confident in himself. So he didn't really feel it. To me, it seemed like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'd tell me that I'm stupid here, but to me, it just didn't feel like he made things bigger than it was. And he didn't feel like this pressure on him. He was just like, no, this is great. I'm getting the opportunity to do what I wanted to do, which was start games. A team believes in me. It's not pressure. I have confidence because this team believes in me. I'm going to come out and pitch. I'm going to come out and shove. And that's what he did. So that was awesome this year, seeing Michael King pitch, and his pitch. I mean, that wild card game, I think it was the sweeper. Holy cow, that was freaking nasty. I was at the game, so I wasn't seeing the TV angle, but then I went back after and watched the strikeouts, especially the one, it was either Urcia or Albies. It was late. Maybe it was the 7th inning. And it was that breaking ball. It was like never close. And then it ended up being way outside, like way in the left-handed batter's box. And the guy still swung at it. It's like, that's how nasty Michael King is maybe it looks like it'll be on the outside corner, and then it's going to be nowhere close to the zone. So good luck. And then I think he did a good job of kind of hiding the ball this year, just because of like how he throws. It looks like he throws over his body, across his body a little bit. But hey, it works. And maybe there's a deceptive part in that, kind of like Josh Hader with him. And, it's working. So keep doing it. But, yeah. And the pressure thing as well. Sorry, not a lot of sleep last night. Sorry about that. The pressure, I think, as well, like, was coming outside, when you deal Juan Soto and the big piece coming back, that you're, saying, hey, he's going to fill big innings for us in this rotation. The big piece is Michael King. Maybe that puts pressure on him. Or if it didn't, like, there's going to be pressure coming from the outside. And, like, pressure is a word that can mean nothing to some people, but can also crumble some people as well if they do buy into that pressure. So I loved that it didn't seem like Michael King thought about that P word, the pressure, really at all this year. Or when he did, like in the postseason, maybe he didn't think of it that way. And he just bought into, like, this is a great opportunity right here. And this is a big game. These are moments that you dream for. Let's go do it. And he did it for that one outing. Unfortunately, I know the Padres won game 3, So scratch what I think I said earlier, like, hey, if they would have got the wild card performance in game 3, maybe it would have turned out differently. I mean, they won that game, so whatever. But it just wasn't the same performance. So like I can't put him in the same category as Darvish. I know that King actually was pitching pretty well that game, and then that inning spiraled on him, and then that grand slam, obviously. But what was also key there was he was able to settle down after that. So I did love that, seeing that from Michael King in that outing. But yeah, making 30 starts, ending up getting to that 180 innings mark. You have him under control through next year, I think, right? Yeah. I think the question with him, obviously, is the extension. And Jim Russell and I had that conversation yesterday about, hey, Merrill or King or a rise. And I agreed with Jim once he was explaining it. Like, yeah, Michael King should be the priority. I know Jackson Merrill, he's going to be here longer than Michael King, but Merrill's a rookie and he's going into his second year. Michael King's a free agent if you can't lock him up here, you know? And then if you don't lock him up and then he has another good year, how much more are you going to have to pay for him? So I'm not saying it's going to come super cheap, but what I am saying is like, it would be nice to get an extension done so you know that like this guy's going to be here. And it seems like he loves San Diego, and it seems like teammates love him. I love listening to him in his interviews, and I've loved watching him pitch. Seems like he has a really good personality. The Don and Mud conversations are pretty fun as well. Nothing, all due respect to Michael King, nothing's like Blake Snell, though. I mean, let's be honest. But it's still fun to listen to those guys. And it seems like Michael King has found himself a home. So it would be disappointing to see Michael King not get extended or be a Padre long term, because it feels like he could be a really good pitcher for the Padres here for a while. And yeah, he's probably an $100+ million pitcher. And maybe that's me going too far because it's 1 year of Michael King pitching in the rotation. But when Joe Musgrove got that $100 million, it was a team-friendly deal, and every year the money goes up. It seems like for these pitchers, at least per year. So, today's money not the same as yesterday, or whatever that phrase. Yesterday's money is not today's money, or yesterday's price isn't today's price. I think that's the saying. So maybe they match the Musgrove contract, and Michael King likes that. Maybe it has to be a little bit more, but obviously that's a question that we're going to be talking about here, obviously in the offseason, about what's going to happen here with Michael King's situation, and then the other extension possibilities with the Padres, with Arise and with Merrill. So we'll see. I'm not sure about Dylan Cease. I think he's a Boris guy, and I just don't really see an extension there, but I'm sure his name will get at least brought up in the offseason. The negatives for Michael King, by the way, because I do positives and negatives for my gas lamp season reviews. Obviously, giving up that granny in his second playoff start there, game 3 against the Dodgers, wasn't ideal, and it made it way too close, right? It was a party at Petco, and then when that grand slam happened, it was like, oh no. Oh boy. Because there was a lot of game to fill there. But bullpen and Michael King as well were able to get the job done there, and the Padres were able to take that 2-1 series lead, and unfortunately, they did not win a game after that. And then the other negatives would be like early in the year, the home runs that he allowed. 13 home runs in his first 12 appearances. But he finished the season 2.26 ERA, 12 appearances in the regular season. 4 home runs allowed in his final 19 starts. So, before the postseason. So, whatever the issue was, he obviously was able to clear that up. And I would like to imagine that Ruben Niebla was a big part in that. I'm not just giving him all the credit, but he probably has some of the credit. And Michael King has talked about Ruben Niebla giving him confidence this year. So, Padres, let's get to it. Let's get to it. That Ruben Niebla extension. Come on now. In fact, I do want to check social media real quick, just so I don't forget to check before this is done to see if there's any news. Okay, no, not that I'm seeing. All right. But his contract, I believe, expires October 31st. So if they don't have it done in November, any team can go approach him. Teams can say, hey, do you want to interview for our manager job? He has spoken to AJ Preller, by the way, in the past about, and not like formally, but about wanting to manage at some point. Maybe, who knows? I don't think I've seen this reported, but this is just me throwing it out there. Maybe AJ ran through a fake interview with him, just a mock interview, like how he does interviews for managerial candidates, just to help Ruben out, So November comes around, and if Ruben ain't extended, I think it's gonna get done. And Ruben may be still at a point where it's like, I still got we got unfinished business here at the Padres, and I don't want to go take the White Sox job. So I'm good here. And I feel like that's probably where Ruben is at right now. But still, there are surprising things that happen every offseason. And I don't want that to be Ruben departing the Padres. All right. Let's get to the final four guys. I'm not going to spend as much time on these guys as I did with the other starters, because those other guys were, the big four starters in the rotation. But Matt Waldron, Randy Vasquez, Jhony Brito, and Martín Pérez, all of these guys did play key parts in getting the Padres to the postseason. Martín Pérez, obviously, there was the question mark about why did he not pitch in the division series. He was on the roster. They could have went with him in Game 4 after Dylan Cease or instead of Dylan Cease on 3 days rest. But for me, Martín Pérez, he didn't have that best start that last time out in the regular season. Maybe that scared the Padres away a little bit. And again, you acquire Dylan Cease to go pitch. I know he hadn't done it again on 3 days rest. He hadn't done it in his career yet, I don't believe. Definitely not in the postseason. But you still put your best guys out there. And Dylan Cease is better than Martín Pérez. So, again, for me with Cease, it just came more down to the execution of pitches. But let's start with Matt Waldron here. His major league stats on the year: a 1.8 FWAR, 27 games, a 4.91 ERA, 146 and 2/3 innings, 1.261 WHIP, 133 strikeouts, 40 walks, 21 homers allowed, and 11 hit batters. Baseball Savant not going to have anything that's dark red, but that's not surprising. We know who Matt Waldron is. At the beginning of the year, he was kind of trying to resist the knuckleball title, like he was a pitcher with a knuckleball, not a knuckleball pitcher. But once he was embracing that and he was throwing it more, and he's like realizing this is actually a weapon for me, and this is something that no one else has, and this can separate me from the pack, I think he embraced it more, and it brought him success. Without Matt Waldron, the Padres would not have had as good of a record as they did. I know he ended up struggling, and he wasn't able to keep that consistency, but still, man, he was fun to watch when he went on that run early to mid 2024. Patrick Mahomes was tweeting about him, remember? There was that video that came out of Mahomes kind of joking around on the Chiefs practice field, throwing a knuckleball with the football or whatever. The knuckleball version, that you can do, throwing the football around. And I believe that was happening during that 9-start span, May 11th through June 24th, where Waldron posted a 1.95 ERA. Opponents hit 188 off of him. And in that stretch, he was facing the Dodgers lineup, the Braves lineup, and the Phillies lineup. Again, I think I talked about this. Maybe it was the Darvish review. Like, it wasn't just a bunch of White Sox and Marlins, Those are some pretty good lineups that he was facing there. And he was keeping guys off balance. The pitch was working. It had some nasty movement to it. And then when you can use those other pitches as well, and whenever he uses the fastball and he locates it and, the knuckleball's dancing, the fastball can actually maybe do something a little bit. It could be effective because some hitters may be so key on, okay, knuckleball is coming here. It's going to come here at some point in the at-bat. The question going into next year, obviously, is, okay, can he find a way to keep using that knuckleball, but get better with some of those other pitches as well to for me, like locating those other pitches and just keep getting that confidence with that knuckleball. Confidence, I feel like, is such a huge thing with Matt Waldron, because he was even talking to the media about like how rough of a time he was going through there at the big league level after that stretch, where you could just tell watching those press or the media scrums, like, yeah, this ain't the same guy that that we saw a month ago or whatever, And I'm sure it's hard to keep the confidence up when you're not producing the results that you were doing in the same season weeks ago, right? Against some pretty good lineups. But it did feel like mentally he got challenged this year. So I'm hoping that he can learn from that and then bounce back next year. Because that end there of consistently being with the Padres at the big league level, he just wasn't able to consistently go those 6 innings. And the location wasn't tremendous, and he just wasn't fooling as many guys. So I'm curious to see what we can see from Matt Waldron coming up next year. And maybe he realized, if he didn't know already, like, man, it's a long season. Like, it's impressive that you can help your team win for that stretch. And it was a pretty extended stretch. It wasn't just like 3 starts. But it's still a long season. So you got to be locked in, and you've got to be confident, and you got to go attack. So wishing the best about Waldron coming up next year, because he's fun to watch. Maybe some people, when they saw Matt Waldron was the starter, was like, oh, this is going to be a long game, or a not a game that I have to be locked in on, right? But for me, no, I saw Matt Waldron. I was like, I'm excited to see him pitch. And even when it wasn't going well, I was like, all right, let's see if he can bounce back here. So we'll see what happens there next year. Randy Vasquez, and by the way, these guys, they're probably going to fight for a rotation spot in spring training, or at least like fight for that 6 starter spot in spring training. I don't think it's just going to be given. Randy Vasquez, this last regular season, 0.8 FWAR, 20 games, 98 innings, a 4.87 ERA, 1.510 WHIP, 62 strikeouts, 29 walks, 13 home runs allowed, and 6 hit by pitches. No dark red on the baseball savant. For me, with Randy, there were inconsistencies. It was a great start, or it was a shaky, not great start. There wasn't a lot of between. There were, I'm reading here, 4 starts this season where he allowed 4 or more earned runs, and 3 starts where he couldn't get through 4 innings. 2 of the starts were in 1-run losses to the Rockies. And so you add those up, and then there's a lot of other things that happened, obviously, in this Padres season. And you're like, oh, well, what if those things would have flipped? Padres, maybe they could have won the NL West. So I'm not pinning it all on Randy Vasquez. I'm just saying the inconsistencies can hurt, especially when you lose by 1 run to teams that you should beat, But at the same time, he was put in a little bit of a tough situation when you're going up and down that many times. He was called up 6 times. I went back and counted 6 times in his first season here with the Padres. 11 starts that he had, allowing 2 or fewer earned runs. Out of those 11 outings, Padres won 7 of them. So going into Vasquez outings, I was like, all right, offense, let's bring it. But there was a good amount of starts where it was pleasantly surprising. And maybe it's just me being dumb and like I should expect more out of Randy. I just didn't know totally what to expect early in the season from Randy because I wasn't watching every Yankee Randy Vasquez outing. So I was pleasantly surprised when he did deliver those 6 innings, 2 earned runs outings, but kept the Padres in games, and the Padres go win those games. And it's like Waldron, not as, extended of a stretch, but like Randy still helped the Padres get to where we all want them to go, which is the postseason every year. So props to Randy for that. He'll be competing, obviously, to get back in that rotation. Jhony Brito, he was more of a reliever and didn't get a lot of time in the big leagues this year. 26 games, 43 and 2/3 innings, a 4.12 ERA, 1.351 WHIP, 29 strikeouts, 10 walks, 4 home runs allowed, and 0 hit batters. There's not a lot of data, to even really talk about on Baseball Savant. But what I liked from Jhony Brito was, the velocity was there. You could see the talent there. But for me, it was not fooling enough guys. And maybe it's, okay, he's got to work on the secondary pitches. And if Ruben, assuming Ruben's here still, really get to work. Him, Ben Fritz, and I don't know if Jhony Brito is going to be in San Diego or what, but I know they have that pitching lab. And go to work and find a way to be better, because having a fastball isn't enough. And obviously you want the fastball and then go locate it as well. Like that'll really help. But having a fastball, and even when you locate a fastball, still that sometimes isn't enough. Because these guys, hit fastballs for breakfast. They're not used to, they are used to high velocity fastballs. They see it every night. What can get you is well located fastball, but you're not just trying to get ahead all the time. It's, I can throw this backdoor pitch for a strike, breaking pitch, whatever pitch you want, name a pitch, whatever. And then I can pitch backwards to you, and I can freeze you and locate that fastball. And if it's with velocity, obviously, then there's less time for that guy to react at the plate. And that's where I feel like you can really be effective. So I'm going to be interested. This is kind of like I think this was for Padres fans too. It was dip your toe in the water with Jhony Brito this year. See what you have. I wasn't expecting Jhony Brito to have this huge role in the Padres anyway in 2024. And now, because they have him under control for years. Same with Vasquez, I believe. Now let's keep progressing, get to work, and will he be like a Jeremiah Estrada for 2025? I'm not saying a waiver, claim, but just saying like he's not going to get talked about probably a ton going into next year, going into spring training. Estrada wasn't, but you have the velocity. Estrada does, Brito does, and then maybe get some nasty pitches there. Be confident, and maybe with how this bullpen might change a little bit, maybe you could see him get into some bigger situations next year. That's the optimistic side in me. So we'll see. And then the final guy for today, everyone, Martín Pérez. This is his full season, so not just with the Padres, but with Pittsburgh as well. 26 start. Sorry. 135 innings, 4.53 ERA, 1.481 WHIP, 107 punch-outs, 49 walks, 22 home runs allowed, and 5 hit batters. No surprise, Baseball Savant. It's a lot of blue, really. It's not much red. But what I care about was with the Padres, he did his job. He outperformed my expectations. And maybe, again, it's me being a dummy and not having higher expectations for Martín Pérez. But for me going in, I was like, cool, another veteran arm. be better than Rich Hill was last year. That's not a bar. That's not a high bar to get over, obviously. And give innings. Go 5 innings. To be honest, I would have taken Martín Pérez. Give me 5 innings. Give up 2 earned runs or less. And he didn't just do that. He did better than that. He allowed 2 or fewer runs in 70% of his outings after being acquired from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I'm going to go look up his game logs again this year. Because, again, it wasn't just a bunch of 5 inning outings with the Padres. I mean, the 2 outings right out of the gate, 6 innings, 1 earned run, 7 innings, 2 earned runs, and then 5 1/3, 1 earned run. So, like, right out of the gate, our expectations blown way out of the water. And then you have 4 2/3, 3 earned runs. There was the 5 inning, 4 earned run outing, the last outing of the year, 3 2/3, 6 earned runs against the D-backs. Maybe that's what steered the Padres clear of using him in the division series. I think we also got to remember in the postseason, you limit the starters you use, and you don't want to go to Yuki Matsui, or I shouldn't say Yuki because that's like a shot at him. But that's what the situation was this postseason. Like, you want to go to your high leverage guys. It doesn't matter if it's the 5th inning or the 4th inning. You may go to those guys because you're trying to get 27 outs. You'll worry about the 26th out later. You want the lead when that time comes, and then you'll risk it then, right? You don't want to give it up in the 4th, 5th inning, and then your high leverage guys are pitching in a game that you're losing, right? You want them to just go shut it down, and then you worry about the rest. And so I can't understand at the same time the Padres being like, we're going to go with Dylan Cease, and then we're going to go with Brian Hoeing, who pitched really well for the Padres in the regular season. I'm going to say that. Go look at the numbers. And then after that, I think they went to Estrada, maybe Morejon as well. That wasn't Scott and Adam, but these are guys that we trust in the bullpen, really good relievers that we're going to put in there over Martín Pérez coming out of the bullpen when he's a starter. And if he's not on it, he's not going to fool anyone. So I do understand the Padres thinking there, if that was their thinking. I don't remember if, I'm sure he was asked about this, Mike Schilt, about not using Martín Pérez. But it's not like, I'll put it this way. It's not like they didn't use Michael King in the division series, or they didn't use Dylan Cease, or, right? They used Darvish, they used King, they used Cease. Musgrove wasn't available. They used all their big starters, right? Martín Pérez is not in that group. As much as he was impressive, again, he, for me, like, definitely rose over the expectations that we had for him. That doesn't mean that the Padres are just going to put him in there in big postseason games if they feel like guys out of the bullpen that also had good seasons, by the way, are better equipped against Dodger hitters. It's always like a what if. Well, what if Martín Pérez was given the opportunity? He wasn't even given the opportunity. That's going to be, I don't know what else to say, really. Like, that's going to be a what if. But I'll tell you this. I rather would go down with Dylan Cease on 3 days rest than Martín Pérez. And maybe that's disrespectful to Martín Pérez, but hopefully he understands that, look, the Padres, they gave up a lot for Dylan Cease. And Dylan Cease is one of the best starters in baseball when he is healthy, and he is, Now, look, some would say, well, Ben, what you just said there, when he's healthy and when he's like on normal rest. Well, he was on 3 days rest. Martín Pérez was fresh. That's fair. But I still want my most talented guys pitching in the postseason. If I'm AJ Preller, I acquired Dylan Cease to pitch in those big games. And you had Darvish obviously lined up for Game 5. You weren't going to throw Dylan Cease out of the bullpen. You have a chance to close out the series I'm sorry. I'm going to go with Dylan Cease. So I don't blame the Padres for that either. Martin Pérez, and I said this, I think, maybe I said this the day of the trade when they acquired Martin Pérez. They acquired him to help the Padres get to the postseason, right? The other guys they acquired, someone like Jason Adam, Tanner Scott, they acquire those guys for both to get there, but really to go shut down the opponent and just shorten games in the postseason, right? That's what you acquire those guys for. And it ended up happening, right? Adam was nasty. Tanner Scott was getting Shohei Ohtani out. I think Ohtani's 1 for 10 in his career off of Tanner Scott. So, yeah, that worked. And Martin Pérez, he was the starter that you acquired to help get you there. And there's guys like Matt Waldron, like these other guys that I discussed, or Randy Vasquez, guys that help the Padres get to the postseason. Tyler Wade was someone, and I'll get to him obviously when we get to those guys. Help the Padres in some situations get through the regular season and get to the postseason. There are guys, that's their role. And maybe they contribute in the postseason if something comes up, but they probably know their role. And Martin Pérez was get to the postseason. Help your team get to the postseason. And is he coming back? If I was in a situation, I probably wouldn't because like I hold chips on my shoulder as well. And if a team doesn't throw me in the postseason when I'm fresh and I just pitch pretty darn well in the regular season for them and help them win games, yeah, I'm going to have that chip on my shoulder. And I'm probably not going to want to just go back to that team, right? I want to probably shove it down them, when I face them. Like that's the competitor that I am. But I guess he could come back if there's like no other interest. It seems like he liked being with the Padres. He appreciated, the packed ballparks and all that. But these guys are competitors, and when you're not used, you're on a postseason roster. You're put on a postseason roster when you weren't on the other one. So you're probably thinking, yeah, all right, I'm going to come in at some point. It's a longer series, and then you're not put in. That's going to leave a bad sting in your mouth, right? I would think. You're going to remember that. So I don't expect Martin Pérez to come back, but I do appreciate his contributions, what he gave to the Padres to help get them again to where we all want them to be year in and year out, which is in the postseason, which he did definitely help that. So that's going to do it. My Padres season reviews started today with this show. Hopefully the Wi-Fi was good. I'm seeing that it was going kind of in and out on this show, so hopefully it's not bad audio-wise. Maybe video-wise it's not the best, but hopefully audio-wise it was good. Jackson Merrill, he is not the MLB Rookie of the Year as of now. Like, that hasn't been announced yet. I think he will be, but hasn't been announced yet. Sporting News Rookie of the Year. That was announced today. So congratulations to Jackson Merrill. That means nothing to him, though, I assume, because the Padres didn't beat the Dodgers in the division series, and it's not like the official award. And he's a team guy, not a me guy either, So, but still, congrats to him. Congrats to the Padres organization. And yeah, that's what I got. Hopefully everyone enjoys the weekend. Padres will be watching Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series starting tomorrow. Let's go, Timmy Hill.